For 40 long days, a shadow stretched across the valley of Elah. It wasn't cast by the sun, but by a man-giant named Goliath. Clad in bronze from head to toe, he stood over 9 feet tall, his spear like a weaver's beam. A challenge that struck fear into the heart of an entire army. The soldiers of Israel, once proud and mighty, now cowered on their hillside, their courage broken. Their king, Saul, a man chosen for his stature, could offer no answer. The champion of the Philistines mocked their God and their strength, and for 40 days, silence was their only reply. The air was thick with shame and a tension you could almost touch. Israel was paralyzed, held captive by one man's terrifying presence. Into this valley of fear walked a boy. Not a soldier, not a warrior, but a shepherd named David. He arrived not with a sword, but with bread and cheese for his brothers on the front lines. But what he found wasn't a battle. It was a spectacle of fear. He heard the giant's taunts, saw the terror in the eyes of seasoned soldiers, and a fire ignited within him. "Who is this uncircumcised Philistine?" he asked, his voice ringing with a conviction that had been absent for weeks, that he should defy the armies of the living God. His brothers rebuked him for his pride, but David's question wasn't born of arrogance. It was born of faith. He saw not a giant of a man but an enemy of God, and he knew with a certainty that defied all logic, that this battle was not Israel's to lose. David's bold words reached the ears of King Saul. The king, desperate, summoned the young shepherd. He looked at David, at his youth and his simple shepherd's staff, and saw only an impossible task. "You cannot fight this Philistine," Saul said, his voice heavy with doubt. "You are only a boy and he has been a warrior from his youth." But David's confidence was unshaken. He told the king of the lion and the bear he had slain with his bare hands to protect his father as sheep. "The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear," David declared, "will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine." Seeing this unyielding faith, Saul relented. He offered David his own royal armor, a bronze helmet, a coat of mail. David put them on, but they were heavy, unfamiliar. He took 1-2 clumsy steps and knew. This was not his fight to win. This was God's. He took off the armor, handing back the king's protection. Leaving the king's tent, David walked past the rows of armored, trembling soldiers. He carried no sword, no shield. His only weapon was his staff and a simple sling. He walked down into the valley, to the stream that cut through the battlefield. The water flowed, indifferent to the conflict that surrounded it. David knelt. The fate of a nation hung in the balance, yet his movements were calm, deliberate. Each one felt familiar in his hand. They were the tools of a shepherd, not a warrior. But in that moment, they were instruments of divine power. With the stones in his shepherd's bag, he turned. Across the valley, the giant waited, laughing. David didn't hesitate. He began to run. Goliath saw the boy approaching and roared with contemptuous laughter. "Am I a dog that you come at me with sticks?" He bellowed, his voice echoing off the hills. He cursed David by his gods, promising to feed his flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field. But David's voice cut through the giant's rage, clear and powerful. "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied." As he ran, his sling began to spin, a blur of motion. A quiet whirring sound that grew into a piercing whistle. It was the sound of a promise being kept, of faith put into action. The Philistine army watched, amused. The army of Israel watched, holding its breath. Time seemed to slow. The world narrowed to a boy, a giant, and a single, spinning stone. With a final, powerful whip of his arm, David released the stone. It flew, a tiny speck against the vast sky, straight and true. It was more than a rock. It was an answer to a prayer, a message of deliverance. In a flash of brutal, cinematic impact, the stone sank deep into the giant's forehead. Goliath's eyes went wide, not with anger, but with utter shock. The taunts died on his lips. For a silent, stunned moment, the colossal figure stood motionless, a statue of disbelief. Then, like a great tree falling in the forest, he crashed face down to the earth. The ground shook with the impact. A cloud of dust erupted. For a heartbeat, the entire valley was silent. Then, a roar. It was a sound of shock, of disbelief, and then of pure, unadulterated victory from the hills of Israel. The shepherd boy had felled the giant. The battle was the Lord's. Thanks for watching. And remember to subscribe for more epic stories.